everyone, and welcome to the Rooted Elemental channel. My name is She, and in this video I am going to, it's actually going to be a redo. I made this video a few months ago, and it was a fun video. I was kind of making fun of myself when during the time I was younger. I was into a lot of research because I resonated with things that I didn't realize I was really connected to. So I was in these areas of research, and I gave 3 examples of when my misadventures in exopolitics kind of like took me in a weird space. So I'll go through it again. So the first thing I'll tell you about was in the 90s there was a really popular book in the conscious community. It was called Behold a Pale Horse by Bill Cooper or William Cooper. And when I brought the book, I was like, it was like the holy grail of like the truth or research at the time. And so I bought the book and I read it. And there was a section in the book which talked about Zapata, the Zapata Corporation or something that was based in Hawaii. And it was Bush Sr. was like the CEO or something. He was like it was his company or something like that. And the book listed the phone number. So what did I do? This silly girl. So I thought about it for like a day or two. I said, I'm going to call that number and see what happens. And so I called the number, and it rang, and it rang, and it rang. Yeah, it just rang. So later that day, I walked to the store. I think I wanted to get like a snack or something. And on the way to the store, I passed this man that was very unearthly. Now, from the moment, well, not the moment, but it was like literally, I stepped out of my building, crossed the street, and then within about, I don't know, the guy was like 10 feet from me and passing. So I was going north, he was heading south on the sidewalk. And when he walked by me, I felt this energy that was like terrifying. It was like, because there was a lady I passed before him. She was walking before him, and then he was, then I passed him. And there was this energy. It was like this dire, like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, there was just this really dark, almost terrifying, I would say. There's not a lot of things that scare me. But I felt this level of fear at the atomic level when I passed them. And when I passed them, it was like, it was nothing I ever picked up from anybody ever. Like, I never felt anything like that from anyone in my life at that point. But he was a tall, slender man, and he looked to be like biracial, and he may have been like middle-aged. Yeah, he was definitely older. He was older than 40. It felt like, but I felt like I was being warned, and I'm like, well, and it made me so uncomfortable. Like the whole walk there, I felt unstable, but I felt like the message was instilled in me. Like I just felt like I was being swatted on the hand, and so I didn't feel comfortable walking there. And then I came back, and even the man's gait, his gait was different. It was almost like he had this float walk. Everything was different. I mean, it was like I never encountered anybody like that. His vibe was different. I felt like, like I said, I was being like, definitely warned, but like disciplined almost. But it was a stern warning. He didn't speak. I didn't speak to him. It was just a brief passing. And in that time, I kind of felt like the guy was unearthly, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to call it a Men in Black experience, but I definitely felt like I was warned. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that was, and since then, that was like in the early 2000s. Yeah, early 2000s. Sorry about that. I know the book came out in the 90s, but that was the early 2000s because I'm living where I'm living, and I didn't move here until after 2000. So, it was a while ago, and I've never encountered anybody like that, felt anything like that since. So yeah, I was definitely being warned. So that was the incident number one, was when I called a phone number in that book, Behold the Pale Horse, written by William Cooper, and said, I'll never do that again. So, all right, so that was that one. Second incident was a series of events put me in a position to where I ended up traveling from north to south. And I was coming from, so I'm based in the Northeast, right? And I ended up down south. And I visited some friends of the family for a couple of days and came back up. Well, as part of my research, I was fascinated with Danny Casolaro, who was a researcher. He was an exopolitics researcher, you might as well say. He was investigating, or he had, did he write that book? Something about, he was investigating the government, or he wrote an expose. He was a reporter, an investigative reporter, and he wrote an expose about how the government has stolen technology from a husband and wife team who had developed this software that allowed for a backdoor entrance into the software. So if they had sold it to some company or whatever, they had an application which allowed a third party to, access whatever information might have been, that software was being used for. So Danny wrote this expose, and it was called like The Octopus or something, and something about the Inslaw incident or something. So, and he was also connected to something with Paul Wiltshire, who was, he was somebody in Washington that was assassinated. He was suicided. And there were some other people around that time too that was suicided. Well, Danny ended up getting suicided in this hotel in West Virginia. And so I drove to West Virginia because I was so fascinated. He seemed like such a nice guy. I just felt so connected to him, and I wanted to be in his room, where he died. And his brother was a medical doctor and verified that, there's no way, the way that his wrists were slit and all that stuff. And so, so I get to the hotel and I ask for the room, and they're like, somebody's in that room. It's always booked. We're always booking that room. They said, we have the room that's next door. I said, okay, I'll take it. And the lady was asking me, what it is about that room, and I was like, and I told her about him and what happened to him in the room, and she was like, oh, and the other one was like, yeah, I heard about that. And so I go up, I start my evening in the room, and everything was fine. I didn't have any like ghostly experiences or anything, but I was just next door to the room, and nothing happened. And I don't know why it would be a misadventure, but I guess because I didn't get to book the room, and that was the misadventure. But yeah, Danny Casolaro, for anyone that's listening to this and wants to get more information about what he was doing and what he was working on at the time of his death, yeah, that was his name. So yeah, so I just stayed next door, and that's it. And so the third and final incident was when I was living in this area where I am now. It's a capital of the state, And I just rented this cute studio apartment in a vintage, remodeled, it's like 4 or 5 story building, and I got a studio in the attic, or what you would call the attic space, but it was a full floor. It wasn't like, you walk up a crawl space or something, or one of those ladders, or anything. It was a floor, but it was like the 5th floor. And the ceiling was arched, and it had one of those cool pull gate elevators that could only really fit like 2 people. It must have been like at least 100 years old, right? So you couldn't put any furniture in there if you were moving in. You had to go all the way up the stairs. So one night, on a Friday night, I'm just chilling at home. And I kind of have a habit of, like, especially on clear nights, just gazing out, just, seeing what I can see. It's just a habit. So I thought I saw something. I'm sitting on my bed because it's a studio apartment. So, the living room and the bedroom is combined. I go over there and I take a closer look, and I don't live too far from a trauma center, which does have, like, helicopters and stuff. So I go over to the window, and I said, that's not a helicopter. These 3 colors, these primary colors were just stationary. They literally were stationary. And, helicopters don't maneuver like that. They don't stay stationary. And I'm watching for a couple minutes, and they start moving in an unnatural way. Like if you were dropping oil into water, it'll spread, right, in a really weird way, but then it'll sit there, right? So you drop, and then it just kind of spreads out, and then it's just stationary. Well, that was the movement of these lights, right? So I decided I was going to call 911, right? Here's my opportunity for a little attention, because I think I see something that's unique and I want somebody to know about it. So I call, and the lady's like, yeah, we've been getting calls about something weird in the sky. And she said, I was like, okay, I just wanted to let somebody know, and thanks for telling me that other people called. I don't have an emergency, but I just wanted to know if something was going on. And she's like, well, we don't, there's nothing that we know of that's going on that the public needs to be alerted to, but thank you for calling. And let me tell you, literally like 5 minutes later, and when I say literally, I mean literally, there was a knock at my door. There's a knock at my door. I go to the door, and it's the fucking police. Now, let me describe to you again. I live on at the time I was living on a one-way street off of a main eclectic street, It was like it's like, every city has one of those streets where, there's tattoo parlors, there's like a bunch of cultural centers, everybody hangs out there. They had a Ben and Jerry's up there. It's like one of those types of streets, right? Kind of fun on a Friday night. One-way street. Now, I wasn't on the phone for a minute with the 911 operator. I live on the 5th floor in a building that is secure. So you have to be buzzed in unless you have a key. You have to be buzzed in by someone who may happen to be in the lobby. And normally the owners were down there, but no one's manning the door, right? Because you're only coming there if you live there, and you're going to get in if you have a key. Then you can either take the elevator, which I would have done because I was on the 5th floor. And so you're going to have to jerry-rig and maneuver that old elevator that was really funky and kind of difficult to work with. And then you need to find my unit. Now, it's an old building. And I don't know about how, 911 is set up and all that. And it was a landline, okay? But you'd have to know what unit you're going to. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, right? So I was like, oh my God, why are you guys here? And I opened the door. And they were like, and he was talking to me like he was trying, like he needed to de-escalate me, like something was wrong with me, like I was on drugs. And he's like, are you okay? Like giving me the baby talk. Are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Are you here alone? Is there anybody else here? And I was like, yeah, I'm cool. And I start laughing because I'm like, what is this? I feel like I'm being hazed or something. And the officer was nice, but he must have been told that, I was having a mental health issue or crisis. So he was like, do you want to, he said, I understand you're seeing things. And I was like, yeah, and me, the naive idiot, I'm like, yeah, I saw something over here and I'm describing it to him and I'm all excited about it. Cause, he's somebody else I can tell about this extraordinary thing that I'm seeing. And, I've seen UFOs, but it had been a long time. Like the last time I seen a UFO was in the Brewster area of Eastern New York. And it was like the late 80s, early 90s. So we're talking 2000s, and it was pretty clear and evident of what was out there, what I was seeing on that day. So I'm telling him, and he's like, well, and then he does the thing where how they got the walkie on his shoulder, and he says something in the walkie. And I was like, yeah, I'm cool. I was like, no, I don't drink, I don't drug. And he's like, well, would you mind, talking to the mobile unit? We got the mobile unit, they'll be here any moment. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, they just escalated the situation for no reason. They sent the mobile unit, the crisis mental health unit, to my house because I called and said I saw something in the sky that the woman on the phone verified that others were calling and saying that they saw. So the guy from the mobile unit gets there, and I talked to him for a little bit, and I was like, no, I'm okay. Everything's fine. There's nothing here. There's no alcohol here. There's no weapons. I'm totally okay. And then they left. And then when they left, I sat on my bed. I was like, oh shit. Oh shit. That's how you learn. You learn. That's how you learn. You have to just, And I think about that sometimes because I'm like, I like to share information because I want to find other people who also, may need a little validation like I did through the years, validation, or you need some confirmation, or, because sometimes you might hear something and it might trigger a memory, And so I like to share information because I think in the long run it'll be helpful. But when it comes down to reporting things to authorities, even with some of these cryptid encounters, you hear about people making phone calls and then some government agent will show up, some no-name agency will come and start making threats, like serious threats. And then you're like, fuck, I shouldn't have said anything, But it was a lesson well learned. I was so excited about it. I felt like I needed to tell somebody, and I think that's completely normal and natural and healthy to feel that way with something that you're something extraordinary that you're experiencing. So, but you just have to, when you see how these things turn out and how they go, it just it teaches you how to move from then on out. So, word to the wise, just be careful what you're willing to report and what you're willing to talk about, and I guess watch what agencies you're contacting. Even though they're listening to everything anyway, that supercomputer over in Utah. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. This was my misadventures in exopolitics. And thanks for listening. I'm at the 20-minute mark. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.